In at number 10, QUICKSILVER. Coming in hot with a ton of arrogance and snobbery, this Flash ripoff is a very annoying superhero. Not only does he have a creepy obsession with his sister, but fans seem to find QUICKSILVER to be a little too obnoxious. In the X-Men cinematic universe, he made a thrilling scene-stealing appearance, but it's going to take a lot more than that for fans to forgive his truly unlikable nature.
You guys want? I didn't do anything. I've been here all day. No, you're not cops. Hey, what's with this gift to youngsters place?
In at number 9, AQUAMAN. Now, Fishboy does get a lot of shade thrown his way, but it's not all for nothing. Years of changing the image of Aquaman will do that to a superhero though. Most notably his Super Friends cartoon appearance as the blonde guy in a bright orange shirt who talks to fish. Even with a badass Aquaman played by Jason Momoa, it's hard to forget about those annoying clips of him giving public service announcements about boating safety.
Tusky says they look like they're sleeping.
Yeah. Sleeping with the fishes. Let's go, Aqualad.
In at number 8, CYCLOPS. For many comic book readers, Scott Summers is their favorite team leader. However, his very white bread personality has made him kind of annoying for the most part. Aside from being boring at times, a variety of stories from the early 2000s have attempted at altering his status as the teacher's pet. Stories such as the Astonishing X-Men through to the 2012 Marvel event Avengers vs. X-Men, where Scott kind of transformed into a fascinating yet flawed leader for the mutants. Although with the Brian Snyder film still in circulation, many see Cyclops to be an establishment brown-noser with a bad haircut from the 90s.
And at number 7, Thane. Thane is Thanos' son. And guess what, friends? He does not have the same ideologies as Daddy Dearest. So you probably know where this is going. In the comics, Thane is an Inhuman character who is revealed in the Infinity story arc. Essentially, Thanos hooked up with an Inhuman woman, got her pregnant, and then she ran away after Thanos and his army destroyed her tribe. Thanos would search for his long-lost son years later, using his Black Order to raise planets in search of the child, which eventually led him to Earth. Ebony Maw found the boy, built him a suit to contain his powers, and then tried to manipulate him into becoming the ruler of the universe. And finally, when Thane and Thanos do come into contact, Thane traps his father in a pocket limbo stasis. Yeah, that's gonna make Thanksgiving real awkward for the two of them.
Number 6, Iron Fist.
Hi, I'm Danny Rand. I've been away a long time.
Let's go, you don't belong here.
I'm Danny Rand. Guys, I just want to talk.
In a series that bored most to tears, his own Netflix series didn't do any favors for this annoying superhero. Besides the fact that he looks like a homeless hipster showing way too much chest, many fans refer to his character with such loving words as naive, irritating, and well, a nincompoop. Fans even applauded upon seeing Jessica Jones call out Danny Rand for being a bonehead like the rest of us were saying the whole time. Sometimes it's nice to see someone on screen that agrees with us. Considering he's meant to provide more of the comedic lines for the Defenders, it's still annoying to have the equivalent of a village idiot in the superhero category. Number 5, Lex Luthor. Again, I know you're probably screaming at your phone right now, but Lex Luthor is a villain. Just hear me out. After the events of Forever Evil, Lex Luthor didn't just become a hero, but he actually joined the Justice League. He even wore some cool looking Superman inspired armor following the last days of Superman. This lasted for nearly 3 years of him being a hero instead of a super evil guy. Now imagine from Superman's point of view how annoying this would be. Not only have you fought against this guy for decades, but then he joins your squad, defends Metropolis, and even steals your suit design? Can we get a copy strike on Lex Luthor? How annoying. Number 4, Guy Gardner. Looking like the Green Lantern's universe's version of Dumb and Dumber, Guy Gardner is a world-renowned confrontational antagonist. Basically a professional shit disturber. He's the type of guy that would throw garbage out of the window of a self-driving Tesla. He's a bit of an odd lantern, but considering how many incredible Green Lanterns that there are, it's no surprise that he acts like a jerk for attention.
And at number 3, Punisher. It's not difficult for Frank Castle to get on someone's nerves. The nature of his character lends itself that way, with Castle preferring to work alone and preferring to use rather aggressive tactics, like murder, to defeat bad guys. Not that Logan has ever really been hindered all that much by an extreme sense of morality, if we're being honest though. Anywho, during Punisher Volume 6, Issue 17, Wolverine interferes with Castle's war on crime, so Castle gets real brutal with Logan. The skin on Logan's face is ripped off. Castle shoots him in the balls, saying, "They'll grow back. You're in my way here. Best if you sit the rest of this out." Then, when Logan doesn't give up, Punisher steamrolls him, crushing his body. Yeah, all in all, Wolverine gets his butt handed to him in a very brutal way.
In at number 2, Squirrel Girl. Within the last 3 years, Squirrel Girl made a miraculous comeback which followed a great run thanks to Ryan North and Eric Henderson's funny and upbeat take on the character. Without trying to come off as a Grinch here, let's not forget that for a long time she was quite possibly not only just one of the most hated, but most openly mocked characters in the comic books. The most annoying thing about her is that she was created to be able to beat out any other character that the writers want. Why, you ask? Because Squirrel Girl, that's why. It's like she has plot armor. Lastly, in our number 1 spot, Booster Gold.
This is unbelievable. I'm the only one here. It's all for me, baby. Guess it's time to hit it.
If you thought reality TV stars were annoying, Booster sets the gold standard for irritation. Constantly looking for an easy quest to gain fame as a hero, this annoying superhero has almost no moral or self-awareness for that matter. He's the type of guy that would get drunk at someone else's birthday and ask where his presents are, all while taking selfies in a pop-collar polo shirt. Plus, against all odds of interesting conversation, he finds a way to insert that he's from a future where he's famous. Even in his heroic moments, it's pretty hard to shake just how annoying this superhero can be.
And at number 10, Superman. Batman and Superman at times really dislike each other. They're basically complete opposites when it comes to their ideologies, and also aesthetics. At times, Clark Kent's alter ego has been depicted as a goody two-shoes, whereas Bats will do whatever necessary, minus killing, in order to bring about justice. One is light, the other dark, you guys know the whole spiel. And often it's Batman's trust issues that lead him and Supes to clashing. Considering Superman is essentially accountable to no one and has an ultimate amount of unchecked power, you can see why Bats gets super wary of him. Now the reason why Superman only comes in our number 10 spot though is because when he's not annoying the crap out of Batman, he's like super busy being his best buddy. I mean, look at the golden age, you guys. That's a bromance if we ever did see one. But often these two are forced to face off against one another. Plus, Batman asked Superman to be his best man at his wedding with Catwoman, which they didn't actually get married, but like that's besides the point. Best man, Superman, not Dick Grayson, who was sour about it. Whether in a wacky World's Finest comic book from the Golden and Silver Ages, or in that recent mess of a movie Batman vs Superman. And at number 9, Rick Flag Jr. and the Suicide Squad. Rick Flag Jr. took over where his father left off as the head of the Suicide Squad, and Flag and his team clashed a couple times with Batman. The first was when Batman discovered that the Suicide Squad existed, disagreeing that a group of criminals who weren't reformed would get early parole if they managed to survive crazy missions that the government was assigning them. In the 1987 issue 10 of Suicide Squad, Batman decides to do something about it, which results in him taking on Flag and beating him up. Like, really easily. The only reason why Batman doesn't end the Suicide Squad is because of Amanda Waller, who is being the ultimate boss that she is and threatens to expose his identity to the public. The second time was when Bats and the Justice League decide to rescue Nemesis, up until Batman discovers that the Suicide Squad is also trying to rescue Nemesis, and then Batman's like, nah, f it, let's not go through with this. But Flag tries to reason with him, thinking that they could help each other out. Problem is, Batman doesn't want to be associated with the Suicide Squad, so he swats Flag away like a fly. Up next, number 8, Green Arrow. After 2006, Oliver Queen, aka Green Arrow, started having a bit of an attitude problem towards Batman. Eventually, Batman was essentially like, hey man, why you gotta be so mean to me all the time? But he put it in a much more eloquent way than that, really. And he brought up the fact that he knew that Green Arrow's anger towards him wasn't because of something he did, but rather something that Queen had done to him, saying that Queen just wasn't that shallow. While out of context this may seem super presumptuous, Bats was actually right. Prior to this, Green Arrow, along with the rest of the Justice League, had wiped Batman's memory in Identity Crisis, something that was revealed during JLA Crisis of Conscience. The reason why they had done this was because Batman had walked in on the other members of the League when Zatanna was mind-wiping Dr. Light, who years prior had raped Sue Dibney in the Justice League satellite headquarters. So clearly, Batman did not approve of this. By the time Batman calls Green Arrow out, he's been thoroughly annoyed with Queen's behavior, and has deduced that it's not just Oliver being a dick, but rather Oliver acting out of guilt. The Green Arrow has often been criticized for initially being a ripoff of Batman, with Oliver Queen being a wealthy orphan whose equipment and base, i.e. the Arrow Cave, have been too similar to Batman's, but the character received a bit of a makeover that made him a much more liberal superhero. And also broke. Coming in at number 7, Captain Stingaree. Can't help but feel bad for Captain Stingaree. For starters, he was one child of a set of quadruplets. He had a rough time growing up, and he dressed up as a pirate as a means of finding himself. He also falsely believed that one of his 3 twin brothers was secretly Batman. So Bruce Wayne, being the ultimate troll, decides to get all 3 of Stingaree's brothers to dress up like Batman in order to get him to stop stirring up trouble and lure him out. But really, it felt like it was more of a way for him to screw with Stingaree's head more than anything else. I guess sometimes you gotta have fun, right? And at number 6, The Flash. Now, it's no secret that the recent Justice League feature film wasn't all that great, and we're not about to unpackage all of its problems in this number. But one thing that we will talk about was how a lot of critics felt that Ezra Miller's Flash was a really annoying source of comic relief, despite a lot of fans liking his interpretation of the character. But one person in the film agreed with those critics, and that person is none other than our easily annoyed pal, Bruce Wayne. From asking silly questions to his short attention span, Barry had a way of making Bruce metaphorically roll his eyes. According to Miller himself, I quote, "Flash is Ringo Starr. He annoys everybody, but he doesn't have any specific beef with anyone." Miller also called Batman the dad who gets too grumpy, and he's not wrong there. Moving on to number 5, Wonder Woman. Let's be honest here. The Justice League film was anything but good. It was a giant pile of confusing garbage that had some pretty decent actors in it who couldn't manage to save it because of how poorly written and executed the movie was. Joss Whedon couldn't even save it, and he's the dude who made Buffy and did the first 2 Avengers movies. If anything, this number should be Batman being annoyed by his portrayal in the DCEU, or whatever it's called these days. But for this number, we're looking at a specific annoyance of his in the movie with Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, which in itself is a faux pas because how dare you be annoyed at Gal Gadot? She's like the only good thing that movie has in it. Anyway, in the film, Batman has a much more cold and calculated approach when it comes to collecting the heroes together to join the Justice League, whereas Wonder Woman is much more sympathetic, operating under the idea that if the other superheroes want to join them, they will. This irritates Batfleck in the beginning, but eventually everything works out and the Justice League prance off to save the day from the bad Steppenwolf CGI. Yay! And at number 4, Booster Gold. Booster Gold has always pushed Batman's buttons in a pretty comical way. Batman's never really had much patience for Booster's antics over the years either. Booster is typically depicted as a glory-seeking showboat character from the future. It uses his technology to stage high-publicity hero antics, which was initially all part of a get-rich-quick scheme. So, arguably, he and Bats have very different intentions. Recently, Booster got Bats a wedding gift for his and Catwoman's almost nuptials, which went very, very wrong. He tries to rewrite the timeline to give Batman his parents back. Sweet in intention, disastrous in execution. The timeline warps into a dystopian alternate future, where Dick Grayson is Batman, but kills, and the Joker has taken over Gotham. This begins a whole series of Booster trying to the timeline and doing some pretty silly stuff, including trying to fix his wrongs by breaking the timeline's version of Selina Kyle out of a mental asylum so that she can meet Bruce Wayne. So yeah, kinda makes sense why Batman has a few issues with this fella. After all, he is kind of the biggest yet most lovable screw-up in the DC universe. And at number 3, Polka Dot Man. The Polka Dot Man is another Batman villain that didn't manage to see the light of day for overly long. First appearing in 1962 in Detective Comics 300, Polka Dot Man, aka Abner Krill, decided, for unknown reasons, to become a criminal and make his MO putting dots in spots all over Gotham City. As you can imagine, Batman and Robin were like, "Yo dude, what are you doing?" They shut him down real quick. Although kudos to him for managing to catch Robin, which felt like pure luck if we're being honest. Polka Dot Man's shtick is that the dots on his costume do a variety of interesting stuff, from creating weapons or morphing into an escape vehicle, which is as ridiculous as it sounds. Years later, he would reappear, and aside from his costume, he basically abandoned his polka dot gimmick, instead choosing to use a baseball bat to assault a Gotham PD officer. Batman didn't even bother to get involved in that one, because Harvey Bullock got to Polka Dot Man first, and then beat the crap out of him, which led to Krill filing a lawsuit against the Gotham PD for police brutality. On the plus side, because of how utterly ridiculous this character was, he has appeared in a slew of other Batman-related media, including the animated series Batman the Brave and the Bold, and he's defeated there when Batman jumps in 3 dots in his uniform, causing him to tilt like a pinball machine and shut down. Character's even in the upcoming LEGO DC Supervillains game too, so hopefully he'll actually get a moment to shine there. At least, you know, for our benefit in terms of humor. And at number 2, Hal Jordan. Hal and Bruce are another pairing that have a very complex relationship. Hal has a very specific way he likes to police the universe, and Batman, once again, operates by his code. Both are incredibly stubborn too, so it makes sense why they would sometimes harbor clashing opinions. But during Emerald Twilight, a story arc in Green Lantern Volume 3, issues 48 to 50 back in 1994, Hal went a little bit crazy, and murdered a bunch of Green Lanterns after the whole controversial Death of Superman and Reign of the Superman arcs. Anyone who's a longtime fan of this channel probably knows my disdain for that whole train wreck of a story arc, aka the reason why death is inconsequential in comics. But I won't get into that now. Anywho, Jordan's home, Coast City, is destroyed while all of this is going on. He loses it, and tries to recreate it with his ring, which is a big no-no for a Green Lantern since it's using his power for personal gain. The Guardians contact him, give him crap, and Hal turns against him. It's later revealed that all this happened while he was under the control of Parallax. Flash forward to long afterwards when Hal has been aggressively working to rewrite his wrongs. And fix his reputation. But Batman just can't get over it. He doesn't trust him. And because of this, Hal doesn't like Bruce. And also because he uses fear as a weapon against criminals. So all in all, you can see how Bruce would see Hal as being super annoying. You don't like me because you can't trust me. Wah. His annoyance with Green Lantern has been depicted in the comics many a time, and it even made an appearance in a very hilarious way during All-Star Batman and Robin, when Batman not only states that Hal has the imagination of a potato, but also paints an entire room yellow just to piss him off, since Hal hates the color yellow. What makes it better though is that he forces Robin to do the painting. Cherry on top. And finally, in at number 1, Guy Gardner. While Batman's annoyance with Hal Jordan makes perfect sense when you look at their history, there's another Green Lantern who annoys the Dark Knight even more. Guy Gardner. He even mooned Batman at the Justice League headquarters. But to be fair, Gardner pretty much hates everybody, except he holds a particularly nasty grudge towards Batman. The two were both members on the Justice League team that reformed in 1987, and Guy just assumed that he would be made the leader. Instead, everyone else on the team wanted Batman to lead. So, full of resentment, he kept pressing Batman's buttons, and kept challenging him to fights, until finally, Batman gave in and said yes. And what happened? The Dark Knight knocked him out with one punch. So yeah, makes sense why Guy wasn't chosen to be their leader. Luckily, he's not a character that Batman has to endure a whole lot more these days. Starting us off in at number 10, Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl is an underrated hero who, in contemporary times, has become an increasingly beloved fan favorite. She has quite the track record too. She's defeated Dr. Doom. She's defeated Galactus. Not too shabby for a girl who can communicate with adorable tree-loving rodents. And of course, she's defeated Thanos, much to his dismay. How exactly that happened, we'll never really know. It occurred entirely off-panel, with the Watcher confirming what went down while Thanos lays on the ground knocked out. Surely that's something the big purple guy is embarrassed over. In at number 9, Hulk. While most of the numbers on our list pertain to the comics, let's take a gander at the MCU. One of the characters who annoys Thanos quite a bit in the cinematic universe is none other than Bruce Banner's Hulk. Just take a look at the beginning of Infinity War and you'll see why. Thanos tosses the giant green monster around like he's a toy, annoyed that he has to beat him down in order to finish up with the Asgardian refugee ship they're on. Then when Hulk is teleported over to Earth, he tells everyone that Thanos is coming and ruins Thanos' chance for a surprise attack. Yeah, I'd be pissed off at Banner too if I were in his big ol' purple shoes. In at number 8, Thor. Speaking of characters in the MCU who pissed off Thanos, Thor is definitely up there on that list. Dude literally almost killed him. Sorry, spoiler alert, but really, you probably should have seen Infinity War by now. Clicking on a Thanos themed video is not doing you any favors in that department. Anywho, Thanos gets the last laugh in this situation, which really grinds Thor's gears. Lots of gear grinding in this video. Needless to say, we're all hoping for a confrontation between the two in Endgame. And Thanos isn't going to let his near-death experience slide.
In at number 7, Emma Frost. Coming off as pretentious and insulting on a good day, Emma Frost, the once future White Queen, certainly worked hard for the outrage that came her way. She even enjoys it, which is probably more annoying than anything else. I mean, she literally ran a school for mutant supervillains that was competing with Xavier's. Plus, let's not forget during Grant Morrison's and Frank Quitely's new X-Men series launch, she basically had a full-on telepathic love affair with Cyclops with little to no regard for Jean Grey's feelings on the matter. I bet even if Jean had walked in on the two cheaters, Emma would have just shrugged and just acted as snide as usual.
And at number 6, Mar-Vell. Mar-Vell perhaps has one of the longest histories with Thanos on this list. Now, the very first iteration of Captain Marvel, Mar-Vell, fought against Thanos in the 70s, teaming up with Thanos' father, Mentor, and Eros in a conflict over the Cosmic Cube. Thanos gets a hold of the cube, and when his spirit leaves his body, Mar-Vell uses that as an opportunity to shatter the cube, ultimately undoing Thanos' actions. Later, when Captain Marvel was killed off via cancer in 1982, in The Death of Captain Marvel, a vision of Thanos would come to him, not as an enemy, but as a guide into the afterlife. So, all in all, despite being one of each other's greatest foes in the comics, the two did make amends. But back in the day, this Kree fighter was one hell of an antagonist to the Mad Titan. And at number 5, Emma Frost. Emma Frost is another character that has villainous roots, but became an anti-hero in her own right. Now, for starters, she has a long history of opposing the X-Men and fighting against them. On top of that, Emma has a pretty intense rivalry with Jean Grey, who happens to be the woman of Logan's affections on most days. So naturally, in terms of trust between the two, there ain't much there. She sees him as a bit of a lowlife. Emma is also often on Cyclops' side when Logan and Cyclops duke it out, and she's fought against one of Logan's favorite people, Kitty Pryde. All in all, they don't have a lot of common ground. So while the two haven't really duked it out physically in the past, insulting one another is nothing new to them. Second nature, really. But funny enough, in the recent Infinity Warp story arc, Wolverine and Emma end up being amalgamated into a single character. Guess they're more alike than either is willing to admit. In at number 4, Lockjaw. Thanos' encounter with Lockjaw definitely tops the list of the Mad Titan's most humiliating battles. Once upon a time, Lockjaw was the leader of the Pet Avengers. Yes, this is a thing that exists. The team would come across the Infinity Stones, and naturally, Thanos, wanting to take them for himself, would attempt to steal them away from this adorable group of crime fighters. Lockjaw uses the power of the stones to kick Thanos' butt and then sends the Mad Titan to another dimension, which all of his little furry friends love. Not like actual furries, like one of them's a cat and the other one's like a frog. It's a whole thing. They're all animals, yay.
Number 3, Orion. He's a brash hero that fights first and then thinks later, and with Orion's intro into the pages of Superman with the New 52, the two were destined to have conflicts. This is mostly due to the fact that Superman views Orion as a younger version of himself. That can be hard to admit though, so naturally, just like a young Superman would, it annoys the hell out of the New 52 Superman.
Moving on to number 2, Adam Warlock. Out of all of the heroes in the comics, Adam Warlock is the one who's likely off Thanos the most. He's thwarted Thanos' plans with the Infinity Gems multiple times. The two are practically arch nemeses, with Warlock having faced a handful of defeats by the Mad Titan himself. In the Infinity Gauntlet comic, which Infinity War is loosely based off of, Warlock is the one who ends up defeating Thanos with his master plan. And on top of all that, Warlock is also the one who confronts Thanos and calls him out for being the self-doubting, insecure little bitch that he is. Warlock is all like, I've been inside the Soul Stone, I know you better than you know yourself, and I know you believe you're not worthy. And Thanos is all like, oh yeah man, you're right. And he's so humiliated by it that he actually helps Warlock stop Nebula in the comics by getting the Infinity Gauntlet back from her. How she got it is a whole thing, you should totally read it, it's really great. While Warlock has yet to pop up in the MCU, if Thanos isn't flat out killed in Avengers Endgame, it would be super fascinating to watch these two interact with one another on the big screen in the future. Finally, in at number 1, Deadpool. Arguably, given their history together and the fact that Warlock has thwarted the Mad Titan multiple times, you might think that he would, get the number 1 spot on this list. But instead, that goes to the man who has taken the one thing from Thanos that he's truly ever loved, death. Yes, that's right, the entity Death. The entity who, in the comics, motivates and manipulates Thanos to do all of the terrible things that he does. Death wants the universe balanced, and Thanos does that with the Infinity Gems. Death has also been quite absent from the MCU, with strong speculation that she won't be making an appearance in Endgame despite Thanos' deep-rooted history with her in the comics. Anywho, back on track here. Once upon a time, Deadpool competed against Thanos for Death's affections, and won. Death had the hots for Deadpool. Thanos didn't like that. So he cursed Deadpool with immortality so he could never truly have Death as his own. Talk about major jealousy issues. Death still ignores Thanos even with Wade Wilson out of the picture. And if you've read Infinity Gauntlet, you know how extra Thanos gets over Death. He literally used the gems to create a brand new side chick who looks just like him, by the way, to try to piss Death off, which also didn't work. So imagine his disdain when she's all over Deadpool and not him. The two had a hilarious limited series together called Deadpool vs. Thanos where all of that went down. In at number 10, Supergirl. Superman isn't the only DC Kryptonian who doesn't get along well with bats from time to time. The post-crisis Supergirl was introduced in a 2004 story arc called The Supergirl from Krypton, which brought her back into the mainstream continuity. Batman had discovered her spaceship in the harbor beneath Gotham, and in a state of confusion, she goes on an unintentional rampage throughout the city. Batman knocks her out with kryptonite, and we find out that she's Superman's cousin. But the thing is, over time, it's revealed that she's got quite the temper, which didn't bode well with the bats, and he constantly questioned whether or not she was actually really related to Superman, which caused the two to clash on more than one occasion. She also went a little bit evil a handful of times. So yeah, I kinda get where he's coming from on this one. In at number 9, Superboy. In Superman Volume 4 Issue 8, Superboy gets on Batman's nerves, along with Batman's own son, Damian Wayne, who is the current Robin. Now for context, Jonathan Kent, who is Superboy in Rebirth, becomes besties with Damian, even though at times the two have had quite the rivalry, especially in the beginning. Now in this issue, which was part of the In the Name of the Father story arc, Damian and John have a bit of beef. Robin has been keeping him under surveillance, and that doesn't really bode well with John. The two end up getting into a tussle. After that tussle has been broken up by Batman and Superman, John loses his temper again, and a brawl breaks out. Once again, and Batman is clearly disappointed in the both of them. He and Superman end up disciplining them by making them work together to accomplish a series of challenges, ultimately bringing the two Super Sons closer together once they learn how to be teammates. Up next at 8, Billy Batson. Man, it's not easy to dislike Shazam. Poor dude. So in the animated movie Justice League War, Bats gets really ticked off by Shazam throughout the narrative. Despite Batman being impartial to putting younger superheroes in danger, the character finds Billy's presence annoying at best, with Billy always jumping into action much sooner than he should. He also declares that their team is called the Super 7, which gets groans not only from Batman, but from pretty much the rest of the Justice League team. Side note, the moment in the movie when Green Lantern introduces Flash to Batman is comedic gold. It's easy to see why Green Lantern ended up on our part 1 list, isn't it?
Hey there, what's up? Shazam!
And at number 7, The Outsiders. Once upon a time, the Justice League prohibited Batman from entering a war-torn country to save his pal Lucius Fox, after the UN objected to it. Bruce wasn't really down with that, so he quit the Justice League and decided to start up his own new team, which became known as The Outsiders, also that he could go in and save Fox. The team was made up of 2 Justice League rejects, Black Lightning and Metamorpho, and 4 new characters at the time, Katana, Geoforce, Halo, and Looker. But things with the Outsiders didn't really work out as planned. They didn't like following Bruce's strict rules, so he got annoyed and ditched them altogether, believing it was more important to protect Gotham City than any of the other stuff that the Outsiders whined that they'd rather be doing. Batman stuck around with them in their own solo comic called Batman and the Outsiders until issue 32, in which the comic title changed to Adventures of the Outsiders, which only carried on for 6 issues after that. Then another 6 issues after that were reprints until it was just cancelled altogether. You lose Batman, you lose your comic. Moving on to number 6, Harley Quinn. This one is kind of a no-brainer. Harley Quinn has long terrorized Batman alongside the Joker. Ever since the character's creation, she worked with the Joker to bring him down. While she pales in comparison to the kind of threat that the Joker poses for Batman, she has proven to be an agile opponent at times. And often, when her character has fallen into comedic relief territory, she's been more than a nuisance to him. These days, Harley is an anti-hero, and while sometimes some of her attempts to do good are a tad misguided, like solving the homeless problem by feeding homeless people to cannibals, she has generally renounced doing evil things in general. She even broke up with the Joker after the New 52. But speaking of nuisances, one time she farted in the Batmobile in the Batman and Harley Quinn animated film, which was released in 2017, which seemed to gross out Nightwing more so than Bats, but hey, dude has probably smelt a lot worse anyway. Think about it, yeah.
Oh.
Batman also doesn't seem to think much of Nightwing's, social activities with Harley either. Moving on to the midpoint of our list, in at 5, Crazy Quilt. A former thief and painter, Crazy Quilt first hit the scene in Boy Commandos issue 15 in 1946. Similar to our last number, he was blinded, cause of his tragedy being a gunshot wound, which led to the character to volunteer for an experimental procedure which would leave him only seeing bright colors. His main go-to from there was to use a helmet that hypnotizes victims with flashes of bright color, but really, he boiled down to committing petty crimes and vandalizing things, with his threats consisting of removing all color from Gotham. Okay? Batman doesn't have time for that especially when it was revealed that Crazy Quilt was using a water-soluble dye to commit his crimes. Dude, ever hear of rain before? Guess not. Moving on to number 4, Deadpool. So Deadpool and Batman have never actually encountered one another in anything that's canon, but that hasn't stopped Deadpool from being all meta and making fun of the Caped Crusader. So yes, this number is a hypothetical one. That being said, as far as hypothetical numbers go, Deadpool has done some pretty solid taunting of Batman on his end, and it wouldn't be a surprise if there ever was a Marvel DC crossover with the character that had him irritating the crap out of Bruce Wayne's other half. Now in the new 2018 Deadpool issue 1, Deadpool got a dramatic new backstory that revealed he was the one to kill Bruce Wayne's parents. Sounds absurd at first, but really it's just part of a grander story of Deadpool trying to decide on a new backstory for himself, in an attempt to get himself more work. He also takes a shot at other famous superheroes and their origin stories too, like Spider-Man and Superman. Now after he takes young Bruce's parents out, he announces, "Sorry kid, but your parents had to be grade A pieces of shit, or this other grade A piece of shit would not have paid me to take them out." He also tells the young Bruce to not grow up and be a cliche, and to stay away from caves, all before Deadpool decides that this isn't the right story for him. Now if that that isn't a way to get Batman to hold a grudge against you, I don't know what is. And at number 3, Robin. If you've ever heard the phrase, "I'm the goddamn Batman," or seen the meme, you probably know where this number is going. Between 2005 and 2008, Frank Miller wrote a comic series that would later be placed in the same continuity as his original classic, The Dark Knight Returns. This series started younger Bruce Wayne during his days when he was an active superhero long before the events of The Dark Knight Returns. The comic is often remembered for how it really pushed boundaries in terms of Batman's rough and sometimes crude behavior, especially in regards to how he treated his young ward, Robin. There was a whole lot of verbal and physical abuse that Dick Grayson endured, with Batman not allowing him to grieve for his parents' deaths, telling him to shut up often, not letting him have any say in his costume or name, and most famously calling him retarded, right before saying, "Who the hell do you think I am? I'm the goddamn Batman." Outside of All-Star Batman and Robin, Bruce's relationship with Grayson has had its ups and downs, but generally he perceives him as family, even when he's being tough with him, which is usually when he's acting out of Grayson's best interests. Moving on to 2, the Hulk. It's another Marvel character on this list. In 1981, in the DC Special Series Volume 1 Issue 27, Batman took on the Incredible Hulk in The Monster and the Madman. Wonder which is which. In the story, the Joker steals a gamma gun and forces Bruce Banner to transform into the Hulk, which draws the Batman out. Naturally, the Joker loses track of Hulk and asks Batman for assistance, who manages to track him down. Hulk realizes this and attacks Batman in a violent rage, thinking that he is a bad man. This forces Batman to use a more absurd tactic. He disguises himself as an old man to convince Hulk to return to the Joker, which is all part of their temporary truce. Eventually, Hulk and Batman team up to defeat Joker, who gets locked up in jail. But needless to say, Batman has a bit of a rough time with the Green Monster prior to them working together, including a moment where the Hulk almost crushes Batman's spine. Poor Bats. Always having back problems thanks to big hulking characters. And finally, and at number 1, Spawn. In the 1994 one-shot Spawn Batman, written by Frank Miller and Todd McFarlane, the duo take each other on when Batman visits New York City. They see each other and immediately get into a brawl, naturally, and Spawn loses his cool and declares, "I'll break you in half," to which Batman responded, "Sloppy fighter, stupid fighter, no discipline." Broken English? Eventually, they come to the realization that they're actually after the same bad guy, so they end up working together, but still treat each other with a whole lot of snide. Later on, Frank Miller would reveal that this crossover took place within the same DC universe as his Dark Knight Returns and All-Star Batman and Robin. In the latter, Batman is known to be a massive dick, so his cruelty towards Spawn in this is no surprise. Miller likes making his Batman a total asshole.
In at number 10, Lobo.
Hey, twice, huh? What do you think?
I think you're a certifiable madman.
Thanks.
Although he's by most standards an anti-hero, Lobo had recent appearances in the Justice League of America which brought him closer to being a hero. He has had his moments of being a hero for years until something serves him more, then he just is quick to turn. But still, because he's a fairly unkempt looking dude, he gets on the nerves of the very well put together Clark Kent. Yes, the two have worked together when it benefited the both of them, but it wasn't unusual to see the pair throwing punches at one another. Number 9, Booster Gold. Booster has been working his way up the superhero ladder for a long time trying to become a household name, but with guys like Superman around, that makes things super difficult. See what I did there? Initially, he came from the future to use his knowledge to make a name for himself in the history books, but when that didn't work out, he began to annoy heroes like Superman. Even Batman has lost his cool on Booster. Superman and Booster work together for the Justice League, and occasionally Booster Gold can win him over, but for the most part, he annoys Superman with his selfish attitude. Number 8, John Constantine. John is polar opposites of Superman, even more so than any villain he's faced before. Constantine smokes, he drinks, he's a womanizer, and more than his powers, he depends on that silver tongue of his to get him out of sticky situations. Plus, more than anything, Superman just hates magic. Clark Kent does his best to be polite to everyone that he meets, but it's clear that Superman doesn't agree with the way that Constantine behaves.
In at 7, Magneto. Alright, so Magneto is technically a villain, but at times he's played the role of an anti-hero, and Wolverine's sheer aggravation with Eric has played out for a long time in the comics, so we had to include him on our list. Now when it comes down to it, it's for the most obvious reason that Wolverine gets annoyed by him. Magneto is capable of manipulating metals. Wolverine's skeleton is adamantium. Therefore, Magneto can really f with Logan, and has done so plenty of times over the years. Hell, he's even done it in the X-Men cinematic adaptation, starting with the very first X-Men Fox film. It's sort of a staple in their relationship, really. Magneto once ripped the adamantium straight from Wolverine's body too, so you can see why Logan would hold a grudge.
Number 6, Guy Gardner. Ever since the pair worked together in the Justice League, Guy Gardner's arrogant behavior has just rubbed Superman the wrong way. It's important to know that most of the heroes respect the Green Lanterns because, well, they're sort of the only ones policing the galaxy. But with so many personalities bodies in the Green Lantern Corps, one of them was bound to upset a hero. The two have only had minor interactions but always seem to butt heads. Number 5. Hawkman. I'm sure you could count Hawkman's fans on one hand at this point, so let's be honest, no one really likes Hawkman. I mean, comment your favorite Hawkman moment from the last 12 years that was, well, loved by all. I'll wait. You got nothing, right? If you did, congratulations, you are now officially the head of the Hawkman fan club. At his peak, oops, almost said beak, he probably was his best bird in Timothy Truman's Hawkworld and during his run in the Justice Society of America. However, he just hasn't had any modern moments that really entice readers to believe he's nothing more than a chicken man. Number 4. Vartox. The two were once allies, but from time to time would butt heads, literally, mainly over their shared love for Lana Lang. Vartox first came to Earth with hopes of avenging his late wife, which brought the two of them together. However, after Crisis on Infinite Earths, Vartox's character quickly turned to someone that wouldn't just get in arguments with Superman, but one who would be constantly at odds with him. Vartox does make the odd appearance in Superman's life, but mainly remains as a Power Girl character.
And at number 3, Drax. While some of you may be familiar with Drax's vendetta against Thanos in the MCU, those of you who are familiar with the comics know that the character has had quite the history with the Mad Titan, right down to his very creation. Created by Jim Starlin, who also created Thanos, Drax the Destroyer first appeared in the Invincible Iron Man issue 55 back in 1973, the same issue as the Mad Titan's introduction. Drax was a human man named Arthur Douglas, whose family was killed by Thanos when he was cruising around Earth. Thanos thought that Arthur and his family had spotted him, so just to be sure, he kills them while they're driving through a desert. Mentor, Thanos' father, and Titan god Kronos decide that a champion is needed to bring Thanos' threat to an end. So they take Arthur's spirit and put it inside a new, incredibly powerful body, Drax. Drax's whole purpose in life from that moment onwards is to kill Thanos. Now during that first appearance he fights alongside Iron Man and the Blood Brothers, but Thanos manages to escape. Then begins a long crusade of him trying to take out Thanos while other heroes, the likes of Captain Marvel, the original Marvel, the Avengers, and Adam Warlock go after the Mad Titan, all of whom are seemingly more equipped to do so. Needless to say, Drax has been a major nuisance to Thanos on screen and in the panels.
Number 2. Aquaman. Although they may be on the same team for the most part, Superman and Aquaman have not seen eye to eye on several occasions. They may only be tolerating each other out of the necessity and overall benefit for the Justice League. Aquaman, though, for the most part, doesn't trust surface dwellers, as the Atlantean calls them. In the world of Injustice Gods Among Us, Superman had much disdain for Atlantis because it gave birth to Arthur's regime. Even in Kingdom Come, Aquaman annoyed Superman when he refused to help the surface dwellers imprison high-profile criminals. Lastly, in our number 1 spot, Batman.
Hit it.
Enough!
You're adorable.
What are you gonna do, sweetie? Burn us with your magic eyes? That'd be a first. You always use it for something.
Besides that college humor video showing how ridiculous it is that Superman is trying to help a hero with no superpowers, the pair did not have the best first impression either. The first thing that Batman said to Superman upon meeting him was that he would set off a hidden bomb that would endanger an innocent person if he laid a finger on him. Sure, he was bluffing, but Batman's dark nature and violent resolutions to problems never sits well with Superman. Even his loyalties seem to be skewed at times, which annoys Superman the most.
Starting us off in at number 10, the Penny Plunderer. Penny Plunderer has to be a personal favorite of mine. First appearing in World's Finest Comics issue 30 in 1947, the Penny Plunderer, aka Joe Coyne, was a fellow who used to sell newspapers, but after he was caught stealing pennies, he became real hard and decided that a life of crime was for him. How did he commit his crimes? Well, everything had to be penny themed. This included wild schemes like putting Batman and Robin into a death trap shaped like a giant penny. He's the reason why Batman has the giant penny in his Batcave, although poor Penny Plunderer would later be retconned out of Bat's Rogue Gallery, and the giant penny was attributed to Two-Face as an item he once used to try to crush the Dark Knight. So dude doesn't even get to keep his claim to fame. That's how much he annoyed Batman and DC. To be fair, he wasn't really operating on the best of business models, and surely he wouldn't have flowered in Canada. We stopped making pennies years ago. And at number 9, Dr. Doom. Now we're not talking about the Dr. Doom here of Marvel fame. Oh no. This dude's one and only appearance in DC Comics was during Detective Comics issue 158, and he didn't even get a real name. He was known solely as Dr. Doom, but don't think that he lives up to that name. His biggest claim to fame was an attempt to steal a sarcophagus. He failed, and then jumped into the ocean and hid under a dock while he was being chased by the authorities. But that's not the end of it. He then broke into the Batcave, but clearly didn't think his plan through because he then decided to just try to use all of the trophies in the Batcave to fight against the dynamic duo. This resulted in him throwing a grenade at Batman and then hiding inside the sarcophagus that he tried to steal. but then he got stuck inside of it, with the blast stealing the ancient coffin with him still inside of it. So yeah, technically Batman and Robin have a dead guy inside a sarcophagus in their Batcave that they never bothered to try to pry out and save. It was just that irritating, and I guess it wasn't worth it. And at number 8, Anarchy. This V for Vendetta wannabe is Lonnie Mackin. Lonnie's motivation to becoming a criminal was that he had a pen pal when he was 11, and learned that his pen pal's life in his third world country sucked balls. He then decided to get woke, and learned all he could about politics. And then he decided that he was going to be the one who helped give the oppressed people of Gotham City hope. Right. Sure you will, buddy. Anarchy's first move was to read a newspaper and then follow up on some workers' rights claims. Eventually though, he stirs up enough trouble and crosses paths with Batman, who then figures out that Anarchy is just a kid. Oh, and while all this is happening, Anarchy had somehow band together a group of homeless dudes, including one guy named Legs who was crippled, in order to help him fight for justice. So yeah, you can see why Batman would groan over this self-righteous guy. Moving on to number 7, Bat Cow. Oh man, Bat Cow. Bat Cow was added to the Bat family in Batman Incorporated Volume 2, Issue 1 back in July of 2012. She was rescued from a slaughterhouse by Batman and Robin, Damian Wayne Robin, in order to test her for diseases that she was potentially infected with. Now, it was revealed that she was carrying a synthetic hormone that was derived from Professor Pig's pharmaceutical experiments, as a means of using mind control by putting the hormones in animals that would then be killed and turned into beef used at the Dark Tower restaurant chain. Damian became a vegetarian after the experience and named her Bat Cow. Batman wanted to get rid of the cow because of the hormones, but Robin would not have it. Eventually, Batman decided that they could keep her. But at first, you can imagine how his boy wanting to keep a cow and make it part of the Bat family could be irksome. Bat Cow, also known as the Battling Bovine, would eventually be sent to Wayne Enterprises dairy farm, where she would run around with a cape and eventually become a member of the Legion of Super Pets. Naturally. And at number 6, the Ten-Eyed Man. The Ten-Eyed Man has 10 eyes, but they're on his damn fingertips. How is this even a thing, you guys? Okay, so real talks. In theory, this villain is only a major threat to himself. He can't do anything with his hands without seriously hurting one of his 10 eyes. You throw something his way, he'll go to catch it and bam! He's hurt his eyes. This actually happened too, by the way, with a shrub. He got tossed a shrub, and then he was in a lot of pain. First appearing in Batman issue 226 in 1970, he lost his eyesight from an explosion, but gained 10 other eyes in the tips of his fingers, and decided to take Batman on by demanding the Dark Knight meet him in Vietnam, since he was a war vet and wanted to fight on his own turf. For whatever reason, Bats went along with this, which eventually led to Ten-Eye Man being captured and imprisoned. He would later be removed from the DC Universe thanks to Crisis on Infinite Earths, where he was killed off. Yeah, no surprise there. Up next at 5, Judge Dredd. What's more annoying to Batman than someone refusing to stick to his code? Someone whose code is even more intense than his. Think about it. According to Dredd, who considers himself to be the law, and the judge and jury and executioner for that matter, Batman works outside of the law. The two clashed in the crossover Batman Judge Dredd Judgment on Gotham, which was published in 1991 and saw Dredd make a dimensional jump to Gotham City, murdering 2 lovers and a police officer. Batman finds the dimensional jump belt that he used and accidentally lands himself in Mega City 1, where Dredd accuses him of vigilantism and carrying illegal weapons in his utility belt. Eventually, by the end of the 4-issue series, Dredd drops the charges against Batman, and even implies that he has respect for the Caped Crusader. The two would team up again, but not without Dredd getting on Bat's nerves. Moving on to 4, the Ventriloquist. First appearing in Detective Comics issue 583 in 1988, the alias of Ventriloquist has belonged to 3 different characters in the DC Universe over the years. But for this number specifically, we're talking about the first version of him, Arnold Wesker. So why is this fellow annoying? Because without sticking his hand up the butt of his puppet, who was named Scarface, he's just a quiet, meek dude who is absolutely harmless. Scarface, the puppet, is a 1920s gangster, of course, who was used as a means of coping with the dissociative identity disorder that Wesker developed thanks to seeing his mom get assassinated by thugs from a rival mafia family. This puppet becomes a full-blown gangster when in use, Tommy gun and all, but here's the thing. Batman takes down crime bosses like it's a walk in the park. So a puppet-sized crime boss who isn't actually a crime boss, well, you can see why Bats would kind of groan over that. Not much of a threat. Moving on to 3, Huntress. The Huntress character has changed a few times over the years. Initially, she was Helena Wayne, the daughter of Batman and Catwoman who hailed from Earth 2. After Crisis on Infinite Earths, she ended up returning to the main continuity, but now is Helena Bertinelli, who decided to turn on her mafia lineage and become a superhero. She had a bit of a chip on her shoulder too, and when she arrived in Gotham City, she just naturally assumed that because she was a hero, she could work with Batman. Good luck there, girl. Batman rejected the notion and did not approve of the way that she fought crime, since her methods were pretty violent. Which is, yeah, kinda hypocritical, all things considered. Over time, he came around and she chilled out on the violence a bit, and even managed to secure a spot on the Justice League. But it took a while for her to earn his respect, considering he basically called her a killer once upon a time. Moving on to number 2, Condiment King. God bless Condiment King. Really. He's a dude whose MO is to fire condiments at people. Hope you like ketchup. So for context, Condiment King came to be in the Batman the Animated Series, created by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. He was literally a mockery of the long list of silly Batman villains the Cape Crusader has had to fight over the years. His whole shtick was to use condiments to fight in battle. So ketchup, mustard, relish, probably mayo, you name it. I can see why people wouldn't want to get sprayed with mayo, to be perfectly honest. It's unappealing, but not really life-threatening, you know?
Suspect is a male costumed extremist, armed with what appears to be a ketchup gun.
It's gonna be one of those nights.
Condiment King didn't even prove to be much more than a nuisance for Batman. He ended up slipping on a puddle of ketchup that he had created, and nearly fell off a roof in the process. Tough luck, buddy. Finally, in at number 1, Kite Man. Kite Man is the product of creatives at DC running out of ideas when it came to whipping up new villains. Who in their right, totally not desperate mind would think, hey, you know what's pretty darn evil? Kites. Kites are evil. Let's make a villain whose entire persona is based around kites. Yeah, great work everybody. Great day at the office. Oh, dear lord. Kite Man, aka Charles Chuck Brown, first appeared in Batman issue 133 in August of 1960. So he's a prime Silver Age villain, that's for sure. Kite Man's whole shtick is that he has a glider kite contraption that he soars around in, along with a pretty silly costume. He appeared twice in the comics facing off against the Dark Knight, and poor Batman, in order to put an end to Kite Man's shenanigans, had to get a kite of his own to chase him. Kite fight! But Bruce wasn't the only hero that Kite Man tormented. He made Hawkman and Hawkgirl groan in frustration a few times too in the comics. The character went on to make an appearance in DC Rebirth as a very unstable individual whose catchphrase was, "Kite Man, hell yeah!" Yeah, you can imagine why that would be annoying. In at number 10, the Hulk. The Hulk was Wolverine's first real opponent, technically speaking. Wolverine was introduced in the Incredible Hulk issue 180, with a full appearance in the following issue 181 back in 1974. The two fought each other initially before teaming up to take on a Wendigo. Since, they've had a frenemy relationship at best, and often find themselves clashing and getting into a scuffle with one another. Wolverine once stuck his claws in the Hulk's eyes. Hulk has beaten Wolverine to a pulp in World War Hulk. Hulk has literally torn Wolverine in half too. Then in Old Man Logan, their conflict really comes to a head with the Hulk and his family becoming Wolverine's biggest threats, with Logan tearing him up from the inside out in order to defeat him. But the two have had some nice moments as well, like in the Infinity Gauntlet series, when the Hulk returns begrudgingly to help the heroes of Earth fight against Thanos. The two sit upon a rooftop and Hulk tells him that he's come to the conclusion that he likes Wolverine. When Logan asks why, Hulk responds, "Because in our own ways, we're both monsters, pal." And at number 9, Spider-Man. Spider-Man is one of the few Marvel heroes who have managed to completely humiliate Wolverine in the past. Sounds like one hell of a reason to hold a grudge, eh? In 1987, the two shared an issue together called Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, in which Wolverine pushes Spider-Man into doing something that he isn't overly proud of, and the two part ways on pretty negative terms. Spider-Man has also webbed Wolverine up, trapping him on one occasion, placing Logan's fist right next to his temples, to ensure that the character couldn't break free of his confines easily. Peter Parker isn't the only one wearing Spidey's mantle that has humiliated Logan either. In Avenging Spider-Man Volume 1 Issue 16, when Otto Octavius was the superior Spider-Man, he really gave Logan the beating of a lifetime, smashing Logan's head into cement and declaring in his inner monologue that not only is he superior, but that he really showed him. Talk about cocky. And at number 8, Quentin Quire. Quentin Quire, aka Kid Omega, got on Wolverine's nerves during the Alpha vs. Omega storyline, but he was annoying long before that. At one point, when he was fairly new at the Xavier Mansion, he started a riot. When Logan was the headmaster of the school, Kid Omega, who doesn't work well with authority figures if you kind of figure that one out, trapped Wolverine in a mindscape. Then in Alpha vs. Omega, Quentin created an entire world with his own psyche. Did we mention that he's an Omega level mutant, if his name didn't give that away? He then proceeded to put Wolverine's mind into his constructed world, forcing him into a coma, and that made Wolverine, along with Hisako Ichiki, to play along with a little game of his. Quentin loses, and Wolverine manages to teach him to respect his elders.
Number 7, Deathstroke. Now, before you get your panties in a bunch about Deathstroke being a villain, Slade Wilson though once saved the entire human race in Deathstroke the Terminator Annual Volume 1 Number 3, and as one of the only humans left alive, fought against genetics who were trying to become the dominant species on Earth. Although when he threatened the entire DCU and turned into an anti-hero, he came into conflict with Superman. Deathstroke really annoyed Clark though when he tried to hunt down his gal Lois Lane. Even with his heroic moments, Deathstroke just doesn't sit well in the eyes of Superman.
And at number 6, Gambit. Gambit often gets a lot of heat for being a character that annoys a whole lot of readers. and also characters in the Marvel Universe to boot. So naturally, he's had a little confrontation with Wolverine in the past, on multiple occasions actually. Perhaps the most famous of their kerfuffles was in Uncanny X-Men issue 273, which was their first noteworthy fight against one another. The two duked it out in the Danger Room while Gambit was fairly new to the team. Gambit had befriended Storm, which made Wolverine ever so slightly jealous. When Wolverine was unfairly distracted, Gambit made his move and pinned him to the floor with a staff, saying the words, "Bang, you dead." Yeah, you can see how that would get on Logan's nerves. The two would continue to duke it out in later issues of Uncanny X-Men that followed, often with one of them under the control of another force, like the Skrulls or the Shadow King. But they also continued to clash in Ultimate X-Men and X-Men Forever as well. In at 5, Ka-Zar. And perhaps one of the strangest enemies Thanos has ever faced, Ka-Zar in Volume 2 of his self-titled series, in issues 7 to 11 from 1998, faces off against the Mad Titan and manages to defeat him. Now, alright, for context, let's talk. Ka-Zar, if you didn't know, is a character who first debuted in the X-Men issue 10 back in 1965. But before then, he appeared in pulp magazines and in Timely Comics, Marvel's predecessor, making his debut in 1939. There's been 2 iterations. The second iteration is the one who fought Thanos. He's essentially Tarzan meets a caveman. Yeah. So the two fought over top a cavern filled with lava, with Ka-Zar dramatically kicking Thanos into said lava after thinking about how much he loved his son, which apparently gave him the energy to break free of Thanos' grip. All in all, it was a bit of a strange story, and Thanos would constantly refer to Ka-Zar as a savage. And at number 4, Namor. Namor is all about honor and ego, if we're being honest. But Namor was also the OG anti-hero, having been a villain prior to World War II back when Marvel was still Timely Comics. So, as you can imagine, mix a personality like that with Wolverine's and not a whole lot of good will come of it. Both have a short fuse, and despite having worked together on multiple occasions, they often find themselves bickering, which then results in them punching the crap out of one another. They taunt each other too, which does not help. Wolverine claims that he could easily defeat the Submariner though if it really came down to it.
Number 3, Gambit. Flirting with anything that moves, Gambit deserves to be on this list. Flirting with anything that moves, Gambit deserves to be on this list more than most. In the comic books, he speaks with a very exaggerated French-American accent that reminds you of that annoying friend who spent a summer in France and insists on pronouncing it Paris. You mean Paris, right? Yes, that's what I said, Paris. His personality constantly drifts from being likable in one moment to eye-rolling in the next. Plus, let's not forget the time that he was a little bit responsible for the Mutant Massacre event where Mr. Sinister's marauders killed innocent mutants.
And at number 2, Deadpool. There aren't many heroes out there in the Marvel Universe who can say that at some point they haven't been annoyed by Deadpool. But really, that's part of his charm, isn't it? Anywho, in this case with Wolverine, the Merc with a Mouth has gotten on Logan's nerves plenty of time. Wolverine's short temper doesn't bode well with the eccentric chaotic killer. Even when Deadpool joined up with Logan's uncanny X-Force, Logan lost control of him pretty quick, causing them to argue quite a bit. The two have duked it out on multiple occasions to boot. And even when they have gotten along, Wolverine doesn't waste the opportunity to really give it to Deadpool. Once upon a time, when Deadpool wanted to give Old Man Logan props, he said to the grisly character to not leave him hanging. And, well, Logan didn't. But he also sunk his claws into Deadpool's fist. Oh, the lulz. And finally, in at number 1, Cyclops. It's no secret that Logan and Scott have never really been the best of buds. Scott is with Jean Grey, Logan loves Jean. It's a love triangle for the ages, people. Even though Scott at times has been a pretty crap boyfriend slash husband. Anywho, with that underlying tension, the two often don't see eye to eye when it comes to what's best for mutant kind. One arc in particular really depicted that, Schism Event. With the entire group of X-Men on opposite sides of ideology, Wolverine led one side with Cyclops leading the other. And when Cyclops begins to lose his shit a little, it's Wolverine who needs to call him out on it. Cyclops went radical and ordered young mutants to kill, something that Logan was not cool with, especially since Cyclops seemed to be pulling inspiration from another one of Wolverine's most disliked foes, Magneto. All in all, two never really got along that well.